This meeting is now called to order. The roll has been taken by the clerk. Members of the committee, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest for any items on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we're going to step 3A. Step 3A provides a summary of the CAO 2023 operating budget. I'd now ask Brian Hutchings, CAO, to commence the presentation with respect to the 2023 CAO budget.
We have the slides. Are the slides ready, Julie? Okay, here they go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brian Hutchings. I'm the CEO of the City of Brantford, and I have with me Sasha Hill, our Manager of Corporate Initiatives and Improvements, as well as Maria Visaki, Manager of Communications, Community Engagements, and Customer Service, and Sarah Monroe, the Director of Economic Developments, as well as Tourism and Culture Initiatives. And to my far right, at the other table, who has about 3 roles during budgets. This is presenting her budget, her department budget, but she also has the corporate budget and corporate finance budget, is Joelle Daniels. I think we all know Joelle, our treasurer and finance. So this covers, many people don't understand, and in many municipalities, a CEO just has a small office, 1 or 2 people, and limited direct reports. I kind of run a commission in addition to being the CEO. And so I almost act as a general manager too. So sometimes people in the public will see my budget and say, well, he has a huge budget. Well, there's a number of things in my portfolio. And that includes, as I mentioned, my immediate office, which Sasha runs, communications, community engagement, and customer service, economic development, tourism, culture initiatives, finance, and fire. And Chief Binkley is here with his deputies to present separately. So just to cover, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Or do I have the clicker? I do not have. Sasha, can you give me the clicker? Okay, yeah. So this covers my area. And then the next slide is communications and community engagement. As I mentioned, this is led by Maria Visaki. This year, the department grew to expand the customer service. We amalgamated in with customer communications and customer service, and it's been amazing. It's really worked out well and great synergies between the group. Maria and her team have been advancing customer service, and her team has certainly been busy with various communication campaigns, responding to public media, and supporting various projects throughout every department in the city. She's a key liaison to most people in the city for their communications needs. Some of the key highlights and statistics of the CCC, CNS, or E departments includes 135,000 calls received at customer service, nearly 6,000 service requests generated. This is 4 times the amount during COVID, 1,500. 750,000 people visited the city of Brantford in 2022, and we know we're going to grow. And with the Bulldogs decision last night, go Bulldogs. Almost 20,000, yeah, Bulldogs the budget. It's going to quite a nice 24 hours. Almost 20,000 visits to our websites. So some of the key initiatives from the communications, customer service, community engagement team. We're going to update our customer service strategy. Council will all be involved with that, and many members of the public have been as well. The CRM management system, customer relation management system review, digitizing many city services, online forms and development application, Microsoft launch, microsite launch, looking at the recreation fund guide, bringing that back in a different form. The green bin launch, which will be a big issue this year, later this year, an education campaign. It's exciting for the city of Brantford. Communicating progress on council priorities and decisions of council, and public engagement campaigns such as the bell tower, the outdoor illumination, portable signs, voter turnout, et cetera, et cetera. On slide 6, we have our economic development, tourism, and culture initiatives. This department is led by Sarah Monroe. I'd like to thank Sarah, who stepped up after the tragic loss last March 20th of our former Director of Economic Development and Tourism, Kevin Finney. She stepped up and stepped in very well. She's taken a leadership role in developing this department, identifying new opportunities and expanding the portfolio to now include the farmers market, the airports, and real estate services. The key initiatives, it's going to be a busy year for Sarah, but the economic development, tourism, culture initiatives we'll focus on throughout 2023 will be the tourism and culture strategy, the economic development strategy, which are both big initiatives for the city, airport vision, creating a vision for the airport, farmers market re-envisioning, rebranding on the 175th anniversary of the farmers market, new public art initiatives, looking at the municipal accommodation tax, which we laid on the table during the COVID time period, ongoing real estate acquisitions, dispositions, and updating leasing, ongoing implementation of economic recovery action plan, and looking at several Sanderson Center capital projects to maintain the historic prestige the building has. In government relations and corporate initiatives, the CAO's office was a small team working out of the mayor and CAO's office. Joining me today is Sasha Hill-Smith, our manager of this area. We work closely together as a team and work very close with the mayor and myself and elected officials. This is a team that brings together events like the Queen's Jubilee celebration, Pride Month, the Mayor's Levy, all staff luncheons, town halls, initiatives like treat accessibility, Indigenous relations, the Laurier Student Welcome Barbecue, Ukrainian City Twinning, Mayor's Gala, which raised for Kids Can Fly almost $50,000. Some of the key initiatives in this area are Indigenous relations portfolio, diversity, equity, and inclusion, employment engagement, culture building, and continue to develop the organization change management team, lean training and continuous improvement, and various partnership opportunities. The last area in my portfolio, excluding fire, which will come up later, is finance. As mentioned earlier, the finance department is led by the city treasurer and director, Joelle Daniels, and I think she needs no introduction. Finance department manages the financial affairs of the city in a very prudent, timely, reliable financial information, which provides effective internal controls, providing proactive financial advice. Some of the key things Joelle will be working on this year is, it's been mentioned already, implementation of multi-year budget process from 2024 to 2027, conversion to a new property tax software, developing funding strategy for ongoing contributions to the hospital, redevelopment reserve fund, as well as coordinating the use of casino funds policy, and then working to research and reporting on the Bill 23 effects. And this may seem small, but is a big for an accountant like myself or Joelle, to transition to a new banking services provider. We look at the overall budgets. I've lost my way here. Not doing a good job on clicking. I fail at clicking tonight. We look at the overall budgets. We are base salary and benefits. The budget total increase of 2.7%, which is equal to the same amounts as the corporate budget at the moment. You can see the various puts and takes. The full-time budgets went up primarily to salary and benefits due to settlements agreements, as well as part-time staff. We have a bit of an increase in the Let's Talk Brantford advertising, $50K, which is trying to do in-house versus outside efforts. Marketing events and sponsorship expenses up $11K, and purchasing card incentive program down $25K, and tax or user, we mean down, we're going to get more revenues from that, so more people using their purchasing cards. Taxation user fees, $25K, which is more there. Looking at increasing Sanderson Center fees and charges, which will bring in $10K more in revenue. Corporate overhead is down by $90K, and salary and benefit savings from HR reports, and then the CAO's office of $43K. We have two unmet needs in the departments. One is ability and collections in the finance department, which would be billed, which is a net zero effect because it's through the water. And as well, the last one is, which is something that's actually, believe it or not, I use this expression, keeps me up at night, is this project manager looking at real estate and development, looking at a 3-year contract. We have a lot of property at the city of Brantford right now, especially the northern boundary. There's about 163 acres, which 93 is developable, probably worth about $45 to $60 million. And we have one real estate person trying to manage it off the corner of their desk. We need to get to that moving in the block planning and moving along with our partners. And Mattamy is in the same block. And we really need to, people say we have planners in the city. Our planners are approvers. They're not developers. We actually don't have any development staff to work on the development side of our properties. So this is a $300,000 expenditure. It's equivalent to less than 1 acre of land. If we can figure out to save on 1 acre of land, 0.67% of the total value of the power line road lands, as well as if we could make 5,000 more on every acre we sell or use, it would pay for the position. That's my summary. I open up, I have my directors and my manager here. If there's any specific questions on their area? Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. We'll now go through each subset from step 3B. If members have any questions or motions to the budget, increases or decreases, they will be considered in the order of the below listed departments. So we'll start with 3B1, the Chief Administrative Office. If you have questions on the first aspect. Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, folks. Do I see correctly that there's a bracket around the CAO's budget number? Is it my eyesight?
Yes, there's a reduction in the last year in the fall, like we normally do. We bring in HR reports. We did it in 2021. We didn't do it in 2022, and there was a adjustment in our complement in the CEO's office through positions rather than min-coordinator. We hired administrative assistants, which saved approximately $50,000.
So that was a decrease in number of personnel.
Brackets are good.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions on 3B.1? Well, Councillor Carpenter.
You and your unmet needs, or is that 3C?
That'll be later in the finance.
Yeah, I'll wait for 3C.
Yeah.
Never.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further on 3B? 3B1, that is. Moving on to 3B2. Seeing no questions. 3B3. Oh, 3B2. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so that's communications then?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a question. It's not in the budget, I don't think. We saw earlier this week the results of the budget survey. And that's the only survey that we do each year that combines an internet-based survey along with a professional, a very objective telephone polling arrangement through Laurier. And I found the information to be very helpful. And especially as I go through the budget and in setting priorities. And I was thinking to myself, there probably are several issues per year where that type of polling would be, I think, immensely helpful to council in making really big decisions. I can think of several over the last 4 years where this kind of polling would have been very, very useful. So I'm wondering what the position is of the CAO and you, Maria, as to whether that would be useful and how much we would consider adding into the budget to do that maybe once or twice a year, and how we would determine when to use such funds if we were to add that into the budget. Big question, and maybe calls for a follow-up report, but it is something I think, because of the vast scale of our operations and the impact we have in people's lives, it may be something that we want to consider doing. Other levels of government do it on pretty much every issue. I'm not suggesting that, but I think it may be a tool that we should begin consider using. So there it is. That's the question.
So if I can, I believe the survey is Ms. Vizaki mentioned the other night was about $20,000 for Laurie to do that work on the budget, which was approved by council last fall to go ahead and do that. And I'm glad, it's nice to hear there's people who thought there's useful information. I thought there was excellent information about some of our services we offer. We're probably talking, probably not as big a scale as that, which is probably single matter, not as long a survey. So we're probably talking about $10,000 to $15,000 each one. So you'd probably have to add about $25,000 to $30,000 to the budget if you want to do two. I believe there's a council motion to set up a task force around community engagement. The task force has not met yet. We've had I think it's 4 councillors or 5 councillors who have put their names in to be on that, but we're waiting for the 3 public citizens to be appointed in the next round of the nominations committee. And so I would may want to put that in front of them to see if that's good to engage with the public through that, because that's what that committee is about, on big issues, on selling of assets and things like that. How do we engage? And how do we, first of all, the main point is selling of assets, but the second thing is how do we engage with the public? And that may be a good spot to have them clarify that. But That was the filter to make sure the public would we use it or not.
Thanks, Brian. Through the chair, if I could just add to Brian's comments, we have entered into discussions with Wilfrid Laurier Research, and we do have an understanding with them that we will explore further longer-term research relationships. So to your point, Mayor, I do think it requires a more robust report to council where we would be able to detail how much one question would be versus a short survey that had 5 questions, for example. The budget survey was quite comprehensive. Each call was a minimum of 25 minutes to 40 minutes. So obviously that's a lot more work intensive, and something that would be, 20% of that time would be 20% of the cost. But if we could guarantee Laurier Research that we would do at least 5 of them a year, then we could look at getting some efficiencies on what that would cost. So I'd be happy to come back with a report. And as Brian mentioned, perhaps that's a natural evolution of the task force, is to explore that further.
If I can just end that, Mr. Chair, then it would seem, I think, inappropriate to put a dollar amount into the budget. That'd be putting the cart before the horse. But I think I will pursue this probably through a more standard notice of motion and resolution at some subsequent council cycle.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Any further questions on 3B2 communications, community engagement, and customer service? Going once. Okay, that's it. We'll move to the next one. 3.3B, finance. Any questions regarding finance? Moving on. 3B.4, economic development, tourism, and cultural initiatives. Any questions or amendments? Very quiet. We'll move on to the unmet needs. Any questions, amendments regarding the unmet needs of the Chief Administration Officer's budget, 3C? Well, we have to get a mover and seconder for that? If they want, but they can ask questions right now, correct? So any questions regarding the unmet needs? Councilor Carpenter.
Yes, the project manager for real estate development is a 3-year contract. Is it expected that we would go beyond the 3 years, or is this just a deal with the properties that in question, then we move away from that, or there's a reason why it's a 3-year contract?
So 3-year contract, we really needed, we really want to focus on the Powerline Road properties. After that, we're going to evaluate the position, but after that would be the Mohawk Greenwich properties. We're hoping that at that time we'd have some sort of movement on the Survivor Secretariat and other with some of our partners. But the one that's right in front of us is the Powerline Road property. There's 2 big properties, as you know. One's 90 acres and Mohawk District, I believe, is 42 or 50 acres. So, but that's why we just thought it'd be short term and see how the project worked and see if it was effective and go from there.
And that's why the 3-year contract, but the 3-year contract would be built into the base budget. Would this be something that we could finance out of contingency until we've decided whether we wanted that permanent?
I looked at Joelle to answer the contingency. The other way you could finance this too is fund it out of one of the property sales. It could be done, wouldn't have to affect the levy. You could refund it out of one of the sales, and we could do a motion where it's, we have sold the properties recently, which is public knowledge. The Catholic School Board could even be funded out of that too. That we're talking about $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah,
so
I like that idea. Thank you.
Councilor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ryan, in the past, I know when we were talking about contracts and contracting people, there's a certain point in time where the law says it transitions into full time because you've done this for too long. 3 years seems like a long time to be under contract. Are we on safe ground there?
I know I have lawyers behind me, so I'm being careful. My HR practice before, usually after 2 years, things start turning in permanent roles. But if it's stipulated, it's but maybe I'll ask. Go ahead, Heidi.
Through the chair, we could support a 3-year contract. I think after that, you end up in a situation where you may need some legal advice, but certainly we'll look at the terms and make sure that it's very clear that it's a 3-year contract.
Okay, so we're on solid ice, so to speak. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Daly, did you have something you wish to add to that?
No, Councillor Van Tilburg, Heidi's got that covered.
Just making sure I say on the screen, not going to leave you out. Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you through you. Could you describe the nature of the work that this position would undertake?
Go ahead, Sarah.
Through the chair to Councillor McCreary, the position is very much a strategic project manager. They act as the city's landowner, and they will be propelling real estate development projects moving forward. So the unmet need is being driven by a number of factors, primarily that the city is a major landholder of over 90 developable acres. And we really want to ensure that the city's interests are protected in these cases. So we are in a really unique position. Brian referenced the Mohawk Greenwich property as well as Powerline Road. We also have Shellard Lane and Sydenham Pearl. And other departments in the city are limited to advancing these development projects to a certain point. So, and they already have in some cases. The need has been recognized to collaborate with city departments and stakeholders, internal and external, together to ensure the full potential of the properties are realized. So essentially, in layman's terms, they would identify and incorporate all of these lands together with more of a strategic lens to make sure that we're best utilizing our property for the community and find synergies between the city-owned lands and our neighboring properties that may be owned by private developers such as Mattamy Homes. So as an example, the Mohawk District Plan, it's a destination area. They require a coordinated approach similar to a mini block planning process. And as a corporation, we really need a staff member who acts as the owner representative, really independent from the planning department. Brian referenced that the planning department is responsible for evaluating and processing applications, not leading development projects. So this is a really significant gap that's become further realized as these major projects are coming forward and landing on real estate. So really this position too would look at master plans across the corporation, make sure they're being implemented, and keeping an eye on real estate market trends as well. That's not something that we have the capacity to do right now. And we just want to make sure that the city is best positioned to be able to respond proactively rather than reactively based on the workload that division is incorporating right now.
So this individual would also be marketing and selling the lands, or would still be engaging a realtor? Or some other method?
You'll get that, Sarah. So this individual, just be very frank, just alone on the Powerline Road, there's 93 acres. We know 17 acres will go to the school board. You know, we sold that. We know we have some other 5 acres as well for the Catholic school board as well to hold, and then possibly the other school board, and then some areas of rec area and possibly affordable. You'll have about 45 acres we need to sell, and first of all, design and sell and do proper planning on. And so this person will be on the boots on the ground, making sure we can sell these properties. There won't be a real estate agent. We'll be listing them through real estate agent or through neighborhood, other offers that may come from neighboring properties. But that person will be making sure that we maximize. Right now, we're making some gross assumptions. There's 163 acres. We're saying 93 are developable, or 95 developable, or 90 developable. How can we get boots on the ground and make sure we get every acre out of it we can sell? So that's what the person will be doing. We're doing the planning, not just block planning, but actually down the ground planning, and where all the houses would go and the developments would go as well.
Thank you. That was very thorough.
Thank you, Councillor McCreary. Councillor Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would say this, that knowing a little bit about what's happening in the boundary lands, and in particular the lands we use or we own, we can't just sit back and let others do our block planning. It's our responsibility as other landowners up there are required to do, to be proactive on block planning. And you think about it, who in the city corporation would be charged with that? And it's not planning. It certainly does require planning expertise, but it really either would be a consultant you hire to do that, or you have somebody in a contract. But a question for you, Sarah. We've been talking about better managing and disposing of the properties we have. What about properties we should be purchasing, looking out 5 to 15 years. I mean, it can't just be about, if you're a growing city, disposing of real estate assets become redundant. But if we go out and conceive of what the city will need over 5 to 15 years, for example, in the area of housing, it may be that we need to acquire lands that we're not going to use for maybe 10 or 15 years, like a big land developer, but lands that, you know, you want to consider purchasing when they become available. So would that be part of the mandate or the tasks given to this person?
Thank you. Through the chair to Mayor Davis. Yes, in some cases. So the real estate manager currently is responsible for the acquisition and disposition of the city's interests in land. They also oversee all of the city's leases, totaling over $1 million. They're working on a real estate portfolio right now. They've sold in excess of $60 million since 2018. So that position is really involved in the day-to-day back and forth of corporate real estate, which is very, very time consuming. A new position would allow that position a little bit more time to actually look forward at master plans throughout the corporation and work with other departments to identify needs early, talk about strategy now, and plan for that.
One last question. This is kind of similar, but more specific. We're going through a visioning exercise for the airport. And I can see that may address, I'm hoping will address how we use the vacant lands that are in and about and on the airport property that maybe shouldn't be used for T hangers, but something else, but would require kind of a developer-like mindset as to planning what you do with them and how you would do that. Would that be one of the tasks assigned to this person? Because that would really be kind of a one-off. You wouldn't do it every year for the next 10.
Absolutely. Through the chair to Mayor Davis, this would fall to that position if the results of the visioning session with council approval send us in that direction.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. I have Councillor Carpenter followed by Councillor Sless. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to move the items, but I'll move them after I.
If you wish, move the items now, and if you have a seconder.
Yeah, I'd like to move 3C1 because it's funded through rate, and 3C2, I'd like to move it with the addition, as mentioned by our CEO, that be funded out of property sales. If I could get a seconder. Oh, I see Councillor Samuel.
Councillor Samuel is a seconder.
And just speaking to it, to the mayor's point about, let's say, the airport as an example, not only would we maximize what we do with the land on the airport, but we need to move forward relatively quickly to buy land that's around the airport that we don't own, that brings it from, highway to highway to highway, because we know what happens when the county is going to develop dramatically. We're going to have significant development in this community. And if we don't have that block to prevent, because, you already see even in Toronto, you can't land at night because of the noise from the residential homes. So the only way to protect that is to expand that, and so that we've covered that land area. And we look at the future for what industries, certainly airport kind of industries that will be sort of pushed out of Hamilton. And Councilor Martin is well aware of this, pushed out of Hamilton, that will be pushed to Brantford. I mean, you've already seen the Bulldogs is an example of that, right? So it's going to happen in a lot of other industries as well. And we could be the recipients of that if we think ahead. So the mayor's quite right. We need to plan ahead. And I think this position, you've made a great reasoning for why we need this position. And this will benefit the city. And it's long-term thinking. And I really am supportive of that.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I listen to the two, they're almost opposing descriptions. When I listen to Brian's description of this position, it's a contract position to do something. When I listen to Sarah's, this is a long-term, this isn't a 3-year project. This is an ongoing project that's not a contracted position. So I don't know which we're looking at here. And if we're doing it by land sales, then perhaps we shouldn't be. If it's going to be a staff person that's going to be here in perpetuity, then to me, that's a whole different thing that we're talking about. But I'm getting two conflicting descriptions of what we're talking about. If somebody could maybe clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it.
because Sarah's a lot smarter than me and she uses bigger words. She's much more illustrative. I think to try to find the middle here, the first thing right front of our face is the power line road. It's going to be done in 3 years. So we got to get that done. To Sarah's point, if this project works out and this person works out, we may be back in front of this council saying, we need longer term planning on the airports and on strategic purchases and things like that. And this may change into a permanent position, but let's try it. See, it's the first time the city's had this position. Let's try it. It's funded out of capital sales, out of land sales. Let's get the power line road done because we don't want to hold up our developers up there in the whole block. It's one other developer and owns the rest of the block. And let's get that done. And then I'm sure Sarah will be back in 2 years' time saying this is really working out well. And we'd like to extend the contract and make it a permanent position and put it on the base budget.
As usual, you've made it crystal clear. Thank you.
But not as illustrative.
Thank you, Councillor Sluss. Mayor Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Will there be metrics assigned to this position so that we can judge the performance and the value provided by this individual, perhaps assessing it at year 2? And we should frankly be doing that more often, metrics in place to measure performance. And certainly this strikes me as the kind of position where you'd be able to do that.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, absolutely. We're working right now on our tourism and culture strategy and the economic development strategy, and both of those require KPI that our department will be responsible for reporting on. This one would be no different as real estate is now encapsulated within our department.
And is there any way to structure this so that there would be this kind of a review, a sort of a metric performance related review at year 2? So you'd know what you'd be doing going into the last year of the contract.
Yes, through the chair, every spring we do bring an annual report for our department. So we will incorporate it in that with the real estate division having separate KPIs that do roll into the overall economic development strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Brian. You mentioned just briefly in your presentation that this work is being done off the corner of somebody's desk. So I'm assuming at this point, we don't have current staff whose primary focus is on, if, for example, the power line road boundary lands. Is that, if we don't approve this position, that's basically what's going to continue, is that it's going to be an additional job for somebody that's already busy?
Yes, if I can, through Mr. Chair, to Councillor Hunt, yes, the short answer is yes. Right now we have Manager Ron Gasparetto, and right now we had a real estate committee last week. There's 42 items on the agenda of the real estate committee that Ron's dealing with, and those are the ones that surface. That's, from small properties that the city's dealing with to larger issues such as like the Laurier Blend and Extend and bigger issues like that. So Ron is doing this off the corner of his desk, and he doesn't have the time to focus on these 93 or 163 acres and get them to market. Really, there's a lot of work to get them planned and properly zoned and everything else, and get them through our planning process, through our planning department. So Ron does not have the time to do that, and we will be basically in default with our block planning that we actually created the rules that we're not actually following internally for ourselves.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, this is a necessary position in order for us to realize the best potential for those lands.
Most definitely, through Mr. Chair, most definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Any further questions regarding the unmet needs that have been moved? Seeing none, I think we'll proceed to the vote. I would expect we'll do each one separately. Yes? Yes, I think we should, because wouldn't want to lose two if they're, so let's do it that way. So on the first one, billing, collections, representative, customer services.
And just a reminder to be in the February 25th meeting site date to vote. And sorry, Counselor Hunt, just not receiving a vote. Did you want to vote, verbalize it? Oh, I see you entered it.
We're good.
The unmet need carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Counselor Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCurry, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
And item 3C2, manager real estate development, 3-year contract.
Sorry, Counselor Hunt, it's not registering a vote for you. Did you want to verbalize it?
Yeah, this vote didn't come up, so yes, I approve.
Thank you. The second unmet need carries unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Counselor Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCurry, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
Moving to step 4A. Step 4A provides a summary of the fire 2023 operating budget. I'll now ask Chief Binkley to commence the presentation with respect to the 2023 budget.
Good evening. I'm Fire Chief Todd Binkley, and with me today is Deputy Chief Dwayne Armstrong and Deputy Chief Scott Pipe. Through the chair and to the mayor and members of council, I am pleased to present the 2023 operating budget on behalf of the Brantford Fire Department. Before I begin, I would like to thank Deputy Chief Armstrong, Deputy Chief Pipe, and all our division chiefs for their assistance in putting together our budget. It is truly a collaborative effort. I would also like to thank our financial analyst, Amy Lynn, and the entire finance department for their assistance. The Brantford Fire Department has a long and proud history of providing exceptional fire protection services to the city of Brantford. Our department of 143 members provides fire safety education, prevention, code enforcement, and emergency response through 6 divisions: fire prevention, communications, suppression, emergency management, fleet and facilities, and professional standards, all working towards one common goal of a fire-safe community. Last year, we dispatched a total of 9,250 calls between the 3 fire departments, and we responded to 6,140 emergency incidents. The Fire Prevention Division completed a total of 729 inspections, 428 public education events, and 58 fire investigations. I would like to highlight our initiatives for 2023. Over the past year, the fire department has focused on key performance indicators and benchmarking through data analytics in an effort to strive towards efficiencies and continuous improvement. We will continue to benchmark against industry standards, our past performance, and other comparable municipal fire departments to ensure effective and cost-efficient fire service delivery. In 2019, Council adopted the Master Fire Plan and Principle, and this document will serve as our strategic framework for the delivery of fire protection services for the next 10-year planning horizon. The department will continue to work towards implementing the remaining Master Fire Plan recommendations in 2023. The department will continue to progressively implement advancements in new equipment and technology in order to streamline the delivery of fire protection services. And the department will continue to explore and expand partnerships and seek opportunities that will enhance public safety, provide efficiencies, or increase revenue. The department has had success with our partnerships with Brant County Fire and the Six Nations Fire and Rescue for emergency response, training initiatives, and dispatching. As a department, we will continue to seek partnerships with our neighboring communities and seek opportunities to grow our potential for revenue, especially in the communications division. We have and will continue to invest in the development of our personnel and technology in our communication center in an effort to build our customer base. Our 2023 net supported budget as presented is just over 21,300,000 and represents a 3.33% increase. As you are aware, wages and benefits represent over 96% of our budget and are the primary driver of the budget increase. Other increases are to account for inflationary costs of material and services, including diesel fuel, fleet parts, and contractor repair and maintenance. I want to thank you for the opportunity to present this year's operating budget. And I'd like to remind everyone that you may only have seconds and to practice your home escape plan. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Do members have any questions or wish to make any motions to the operating budget increases or decreases? Mayor Davis.
Good evening, Chief, and no unmet needs this year?
There are no unmet needs this year.
Right. So last year we did address that unmet need. I think it involved the hiring of 7 additional firefighters to deal with the ladder truck.
Through the chair, that is correct. We council supported the hiring of 8 firefighters to fully staff the area.
So this year we're seeing the impact of that now on an annual basis, whereas what last year was about over a half a year.
Through the chair, it was approximately December 16th that we started to operate that area fully staffed. It was allowing for all the recruits to come on and do their recruit training.
All right. So what we're seeing here is a full year's budget with all of those additional firefighters working for 12 months.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Yep. Okay. So it's actually kind of less than I thought it might have been, but that's great. Good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councilor Carpenter.
First of all, thank you for your service. For all the firefighters are very much appreciated. And I think I've joined your team for blood donations. I was seconded. But anyways, I'd like to, in your chargebacks, are you able to do a chargeback for some of the fires? Like, for example, you spoke about your collaboration. I was sort of dragged this out a bit, but I spoke about your collaboration with other departments, and that was certainly evident on the fire on Henry Street because you had tremendous collaboration, not only from your other fire departments, county and Six Nations, but from the neighborhood as well. So, are you able to charge back in those kinds of businesses when they have a history of fires there?
Through the chair, council has supported fees and charges for certain fire responses, and some of those includes large fires.
Okay, so you charge back where you can. For example, you do charge back for anything on the highway that you have to attend because you charge the provincial government then for that, right?
Through the chair, that's correct. The provincial government provides funding back for responses to the Queen's highways.
And, as you have firefighters retire, you're replacing them on a regular basis. In fact, I think you got a recruitment coming up Friday, do you not?
Through the chair, yes, we have recruitment coming up Friday.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other revenue went up substantially. Is that to do with the dispatch for other departments? You had an 87% increase there.
Through the chair, there was some increases due to dispatching of other municipal fire departments, as well as there was alignment of our fees and charges to the actual what we collected last year.
Oh, okay. So it's more reflective of your actuals now.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And do you charge for false alarms?
Through the chair, yes, council supported the charging for false fire alarms.
did that make a difference in the number of false alarms that you run?
Through the chair, yes, it's had a positive impact. We have a program that, in sort of conjunction with charging for those false alarms, we also have fire prevention officers attend and work with property owners to reduce their false fire alarms.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Slass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, gentlemen. Chief, do you have a budget line for special events? And if I could elaborate on that a little bit, you folks appear in the strangest places. And I can go back, and I'm not sure it was this year or last year, on a really hot day, there was an event going on a park on my street, on Devon Street Park. And the fire truck rolled in and they started shooting up a giant cannon up into the air, and the kids went crazy. Are those things, are they planned, or is that spontaneous, or how do you do that?
Through the chair, that falls in line with our belief that the fire department is a community fire department. Those events are planned. The crews that attend those are on shift working, so that it's part of their regular duties, and they would have to respond to an emergency, obviously, if they were called away, but they're planned, and that's why we attend.
Okay, well, if anything, I would encourage you to do that as often as you can. It's kids on the street that I live on are still talking about the day that the truck rolled up, and you let them crawl all over the truck, and like they just did everything that a kid wants to do, and you folks allowed them to do that. And I think that's really community building. And I didn't know whether you needed a budget for that, but if those folks are on shift, and that event could get cut short if you get called away, and that can happen. But I think doing that kind of thing, I think really does put a positive image out there for the department, and really for the city as a whole. I think people really feel good about that. They don't ever want to use your service, but they love to see you there, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, now you got the big smile on my face with that one, Councillor Slass. Any further questions for fire regarding this item? Seeing none. I don't see anyone. Thank you very much. And I believe we can move into the next step 5. Step 5A provides a summary of people legislated services and planning operating budget. I'll now ask Heidi DeVries, General Manager, to commence the presentation with respect to the 2023 budget.
Thank you very much, Chair Van Tilburg. As you can see, we have more directors than chairs, so I'm going to stay in my seat here while we conduct this presentation. So thank you for the opportunity to present the 2023 operating budget for people, legislated services, and planning. I would specifically like to thank our financial analyst, Michelle, who had to replace Sheila Bacilli after many long years of service to our commission. And I can imagine that was not an easy task, but we have very much appreciated her involvement in this budget. So the People Legislated Services and Planning Commission is comprised of 6 departments, which is a blending of 2 very specific service areas, one being the corporate services that support the various internal departments of the city of Brantford, as well as 2 departments that support the building and development of the city of Brantford. Our theme for the past year has been Come Grow With Us, which is an invitation to the development community to grow Brantford with us. We know Brantford is a growing municipality, and also to those who work for the city of Brantford to join us in advancing their careers and their learning opportunities, and to develop the skills that they need to be exceptional employees for the city of Brantford. And we certainly have many of them here. So with me today is Anita Saloki, head of the Human Resources Department, which is involved in the recruitment, health and safety processes, labor relations, negotiations, training and development, and benefits administration. Also, Kim Jolly, City Solicitor, Director of Legal Services. Legal Services provides a host of services to the internal departments of the City of Brantford, including drafting and negotiating agreements, writing bylaws, conducting our litigation, and handling our insurance portfolio. Also, our acting city clerk, Chris Gauthier, who has done exceptional work in our budget this year. is in charge of business licensing, elections, council and committee meeting operations. We're here today thanks to the work of our clerks team as well, records management and freedom of information requests. Also with me this evening is Scott Hall, our Director of IT Services. IT Services provides a host of supports to the City of Brantford's internal departments, including our IT help desk, device support, lifecycle management, network and server infrastructure, unified communications, cybersecurity and business continuity, as well as a lot of other services that allow us to operate in this hybrid model. Also on the planning and development side, Nicole Wilmot, our Chief Planner, Director of Planning, of course, planning and development applications and approvals, official plan and zoning bylaw amendments, as well as demolition permits, minor variances, heritage, and development-related engineering design review are all housed in Nicole's department. And finally, last but not least, Andy McMahon, our Chief Building Official. Of course, building permits, inspections, bylaw enforcement, and parking services are contained within that portfolio. So just to highlight our 2023 initiatives for PLSP, and there are quite a few here. One of the key initiatives in human resources is, of course, our People Master Plan, which will be the document that will guide our human resources in terms of the services they provide to the employees of the City of Brantford in the future. As well, I'd like to highlight the electronic records management system that will be launched by our City Clerks Department, which will help us better assess and host the documents that we use here in the City of Brantford, access those documents, and create efficiencies in terms of our storage and records management. An IT highlight is the rollout of Microsoft 365, long awaited for this municipality, and that will allow us to use new technologies to better communicate with one another. Also, in the planning and development services, the completion of our new zoning bylaw is anticipated by the end of this year and will be a much welcome change in the City of Brantford to complement the official plan that Council passed a few years ago. And we're also looking forward to new development engineering manuals, a new building bylaw, as well as a new building permit fee structure and a comprehensive parking study for the City of Brantford, which we heard about in the capital budget presentations last month. So in terms of the PLSP operating budget, the People Legislated Services and Planning's operating budget represents 6.71% of the overall city net budget. This year's budget is proposed at approximately $12,200,000, which is a percentage variance of 6.4% over last year. And while you can see a few brackets in this budget, including within the clerk's department and the planning department, where we found some efficiencies and some cost savings, you'll notice that there are three areas where there are amounts that are driving up this budget. Specifically, as you've heard from other presentations, base salary and benefits commission-wide were increased by approximately $370,000. And then in legal services, where you're seeing a percentage increase of approximately 13.21%, that's being driven by a previous report approved by council for the additional staff in the Provincial Offences Court. And this is to address some key initiatives that are happening within that court. It's one of the first staffing changes we've seen in 20 years in terms of the staff complement there. And specifically, that is to address the red light camera program that will be launched this year, future automated speed enforcement, as well as the download of the Part 3 prosecutions from the province of Ontario. Also included in that budget is a transfer to the red light program from the red light program to the Vision Zero account, which is again a new initiative that's now being accounted for in this budget. And perhaps the key operating impact is, of course, the operational impacts of capital projects approved through IT services. Specifically, we're seeing an increase of approximately $430,000 in terms of the technology costs and subscriptions. IT services has over 100 lines of different softwares utilized by the City of Brantford that we are constantly looking at to find efficiencies and improvements in the way that we run our programs here, but all are necessary to the operation of the City of Brantford. We also heard earlier about the new tax software. That tax software is hitting this IT operating budget to the tune of approximately $180,000. And we're proud of those initiatives, and certainly technology does allow us to do our jobs better and more efficiently, but there are costs that increase with those technological improvements. Hopefully we see those efficiencies elsewhere. And then finally, there was an increase in the parking contract, which was renewed this year to the tune of $95,000, which is what you're seeing in terms of the building services budget. And this is my favorite slide, which is the rate supported budget through our building department. You're seeing a total gross revenues and expenditures, which equal out based on the requirements under the Building Code Act. I know that that information is not currently contained in this slide. It was not available at the time of this budget preparation, but we anticipate that there will be a transfer to the reserve from the 2022 surplus of approximately $1.55 million. Again, that's just an estimate. And because we get asked this question, that the current total in that reserve is $7.84 million. So we anticipate that by the end of this fiscal year, the total amount in that reserve will be $9.5 million. I did check with the chief building official and I was not permitted to use that elsewhere in my budget. But that does equal to approximately 2.8% of the operating budget. Industry standard is that this reserve should contain between 2 to 3%. I should note that one of the key initiatives this year is a fee review being conducted by Hempson Consulting. This fee review is paid for through money that we acquired from the province of Ontario as part of our development approvals process improvement program. That fee review is looking at planning fees, development engineering fees, and building fees to ensure that they are in line with industry standards. So the fees in our budgets, you will not see too much movement on in terms of what we're budgeting for 2023, but we hope to have some excellent supporting documentation as we head into the 2024 budgeting season to ensure that these fees are capturing the amounts that we should be from the development community and that they are appropriate. Thank you for the opportunity to present. As I mentioned, I have quite a few directors here who are happy to answer the more detailed questions you may have on our budget.
All right, we'll now go through each subset up to step 5B. If members have any questions or motions to budget increases or decreases, they will be considered in the order of the listed departments. So we'll start with 5B1, Human Resources. Any questions or motions? Councillor Sullivan.
I just have one. On line 121-300 under the health and safety, that shows a reduction. Normally that's a good thing, but under health and safety, it does raise a little bit of a red flag for me. So can you clarify why we have a reduction there?
Through Chair Van Tilborg to Councillor Sullivan, the reduction in the health and safety line has to do with the historical review of the asbestos management program. We've been able to come under budget for that particular project, and that's what's led to that decrease.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Any further questions regarding the human resources? Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. We heard from the GM that we have some increased costs with respect to POA admin. Is there an offsetting revenue line somewhere?
Through the chair, Kim Jolly, Director of Legal Services and City Solicitor. Yes, there is an offsetting line of revenue that does come into the POA as a result of what we are anticipating to be an increased number of offenses through the courts this year. The program is just getting started, however, and so a conservative approach was taken to the revenue that we are anticipating as we get this program off the ground and see what a number of charges is actually going to look like.
So it'll be 2024 before we see a significant difference in revenue.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Any further questions regarding human resources? Seeing, no, okay. I just saw some movement there, no problem. 5B2, Legal Services. Any questions? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, I think that Councillor McCurry's question, I think, went to this. Because I noticed in the legal services, $150,000 in that red light camera. And so is that because we're front end loading that program and we shouldn't see that year 2 or 3? Because I thought this program was going to be self-funded through the fines.
Through the chair to Mayor Davis, there was direction provided to staff through a report that was received through the Vision Zero committee and went on to be approved by council, indicating that a reserve fund was to be established for the net profits received through the red light camera violations for the sole use of road safety initiatives. And so that $151,000 that you see is a transfer, or 153, pardon me, is a transfer to the red light camera reserve fund.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Any further questions regarding legal services? Seeing none. Clerk's Department. Do we have any questions or amendments regarding the Clerk's Department? Seeing none. 5.4, IT Services. Do we have any questions? Counselor Sullivan? Oh, over here. I have to look all the way around. Counselor Martin.
Yeah, you have to look this way once in a while as well. Thank you. Through you to IT. How many people are in your department?
We have, including myself, a complement of 29 FTEs.
Okay, and how many of them are programmers?
We currently have what we would classify as 2 developers. That's their main focus. We have another individual who also does development. That person's our data engineer. It's also essentially let's say 2.5, because part of their job is doing interface development as well.
Okay, and I don't know if you saw the police proposal, but they want a programmer on their department. Is programming something that you could offer to assist them with instead of them hiring somebody just for that?
Yes, I did, through the chair, I did see that discussion the other night. The challenge there, from at least, and I can only speak from the systems that we use here at the city, and I'm not as familiar with what's used at police services, but part of what I ascertained from that discussion was integration with their systems. Okay. We don't have familiarity with it. And then on the other side, just having that connectivity and the security protocols that they have to protect, their information, that would become a bit of a challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Any further questions regarding IT services? Seeing none, we'll move to 5B5, Planning and Development Services. Do we have any questions? Mayor Davis.
Can we ask questions about the unmet need now, or do we hold that?
We were holding that. We're just going to go through the last 2, and then we can put the unmet need on the floor if you so wish.
Okay, I'll ask my question then.
All right. 5B, no planning and development. Let's move to 5B6, building. Seeing none. Mayor Davis, would you like to discuss the unmet need? Put it on the floor.
Yes. So, well, I guess I'll move it to get it on the floor. That's the $100,000, if I understand this correctly, allocation for the commercial facade mixed use building improvement grant.
Seeking a seconder. Put on the floor. Councilor Carpenter.
Okay. So the question I have is this, that so coming out of the downtown improvement task force, one area of priority dealing with the issue of safety and building security was, and this came out of police services. In fact, it was recommended by the deputy chief and accepted by the task force. And it was that there are measures and steps that property owners can take and commercial tenants that will improve the safety of the use they carry on the property and make the property, let's say, crime proof. And in fact, the last downtown BIA, the representative from police services indicated that they now have 1 or 2 officers who are trained to be able to do that, go in at the request of a downtown property owner, assess the property in the building, make recommendations what might be done to improve the security of that building. Could be things like maybe it's a roll down metal shutter to prevent an alcove from being used at night and windows broken, that sort of thing. So part of the downtown task force was that we should also, to supplement that, something similar to the facade program, come up with a program where you could apply as a property owner, get a grant of up to 50% of the cost of such improvements up to a certain maximum. Is this intended for that purpose? At least in part.
Through the chair to the counselor, or sorry, through the chair to Mayor Davis. No, not specifically. This grant, the grant that is before you with respect to the unmet need, it deals more with the Grayfield revitalization grants in association with the encouragement of the conversion of existing buildings into mixed use properties, as well as some of the commercial facade improvements to those properties. and there may be an opportunity to look at within the commercial facade component, a CEPTED opportunity. So what you're referring to is generally referred to as CEPTED, which is crime prevention through something design. That's essentially what the CEPTED program is. So this isn't specifically designed for CEPTED type improvements, but there may be opportunity to expand it to include those types of issues because they weren't necessarily looked at through the Greyfields design, but I can see that those would generally fall within a commercial property and improvement.
All right. And so the old facade program, we set up, probably I think it was something similar, about $100,000. And that was gradually used over the course of, I think, 2, 3, 4 years. Is it the same intent with these funds? They're not going to be used all in 1 year, but it'll create a kind of a fund or reserve that's then drawn upon over how many years?
That's correct. Through the chair to Mayor Davis, that's correct. So the program is application based. So there may be years where you would get up to 6 or 7 applications, depending on the appetite of using the program, where we may exhaust all funding within that year. But our existing grant programs do have a carryover where any unspent funds do carry over to the future operating year. And we see that with our heritage grants as well. So this would be a similar setup as well.
Okay. So I'm going to move an amendment, Mr. Chair, that the same dollar amount but that half of the funds be allocated towards a CEPTED program for the greater downtown area. And I know there's different downtown areas, but have in mind, I think the BIA downtown area, which is more expansive than just the core. So I'm moving an amendment.
All right, I have Councillor Martin in the queue. Councillor Martin, do you wish to speak before this amendment is addressed? Doesn't matter. Very good. Then we'll move ahead. Who's your seconder, Mayor? Councillor Carpenter? Councillor Carpenter is the seconder. And if we could just repeat again what it is that your amendment covers.
Yes, that 1/2 of these funds would be allocated towards funding a CEPTED program for the greater downtown area.
Very good. Any discussion? Wish to speak to the amendment to the amendment? Seeing none, let's call the vote.
The amendment to the amendment carried unanimously on recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had me on your list there. Okay. What area does this grant cover?
This area covers the target areas within the Greyfield CIP. So there isn't an overlap in the downtown area. We do have a separate downtown CIP for redevelopment projects within the downtown. So staff would need to take a look at how we would be able to apply this type of grant funding within our downtown. It would likely be a modification to our existing CIP programs.
So Greyfields and other parts of the city don't qualify for this?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's why I can't support this. This is strictly one area. We're asking people to pay property taxes throughout the city. Their property taxes are going into a program that they can't utilize, but others that their competition can. I don't see that as being fair to anybody in business. Also, we have the Bulldogs coming, which is going to help the downtown, and maybe this kind of incentive isn't needed. Maybe the excitement of the Bulldogs coming will help have people get excited about fixing up their property without a grant like this. And the other thing is, have you ever looked at this funding this through a tax incentive program where they get to keep a portion of the property taxes that are increased because their building is now improved?
So the way that the grant programs are structured, we do offer the TIG program where we look at the increase in the actual creation of the units. This is structured as a 50-50 grant. So what the intent is it's to focus on the redevelopment or revitalization of existing property. So it doesn't necessarily consider new development, but it's 50-50 in the sense that it's meant to increase the private sector investment in these properties. So rather than a straight grant or a tax back, we look at it in terms of the 50-50 matching. And that's how that program's been set up.
One of the things with the program like this is one of the arguments is that it improves the taxes that we collect from these properties. Is that something that this program generates?
I think overall, through the chair to the council, I think overall, when we're looking at reinvestment in properties, whether it's new construction or it's existing properties, I think it absolutely increases the ultimate use of that property, the opportunity for future expansion of those properties, but also looks at increasing tax base as well.
Okay. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to try an amendment that this be funded through a tax incentive program instead of putting cash directly into the account.
And your seconder?
Councillor McCurry.
Councillor McCurry.
The advantage of that is this is a program that can then go on in perpetuity because it'll be self-funding. We won't have to worry about how much we're putting in, whether it's enough or too much. With it being self-funding, it can carry on and we might look at expanding it to all of the city instead of a limited area. I think it's a better way to do it. We did it with the plan to help encourage additional residential in the downtown through a tax incentive program. And I think it's a better way to fund this kind of program.
Okay, I had two speakers in the queue prior to the amendment. Do you gentlemen wish to speak prior to the amendment on the original? Then we will wait and we will go straight into any discussion on the amendment on the floor. I'm sorry. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I can maybe provide some clarification, because I think what's happening now is we're getting into the merits of the program that was approved. And, I'm hearing from our treasurer as well that the nature of the program is actually not to increase assessment. So it's not like some of our other grant programs where we have that incremental tax-based a grant where you increase the assessment by creating new units. This is about improving the facade, and that's harder to capture in terms of the tax improvements. I mean, unless the property is reassessed and you've put marble all over your front facade and that somehow increases the assessment, it's really hard to trace that. So staff were directed to bring forward a request to this committee for funding of a program that was already approved. And that's what the request is before us here tonight.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yes,
Councillor Sless and Mayor Davis.
I won't support the amendment to the amendment simply because it just creates another level of bureaucracy or workload. And we already have tax incentive programs on many of these properties for building and redeveloping those properties. Now to add one for a facade program on top of that, I don't know how complicated that would be for the tax assessment. Could staff give me some kind of indication how such a thing would even work?
Through the chair to the councillor, I think as Mr. Breeze mentioned, I think what we're doing is we're sort of reimagining the program and the way that the funding structure has been set up. I think it would be more appropriate to ask staff to go away and consider the options that have been brought forward by this committee this evening and how we can ultimately look to fund them. The CIP program is already approved by council. There are parameters in place and eligibility criteria. I think if we want to look at the restructuring of these programs and the finances associated with them, it's really a redirection to take a look at that program again.
Okay, thank you. And that's why I won't support this. I mean, this is just re-arguing what council already set in place not that long ago that was accepted through council through reports. And I understand the mover of this didn't support it then, and this is a way to get out of it now. So I won't support that direction going forward.
Councillor Sless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. This would require seed money. If you're going to give somebody a grant because they did the facade, you're not going to know whether it increased until after. So how do you grant them? There's nothing to grant them with.
So this is a direct contribution to the.
No, I'm
facade
talking about the
improvements.
amendment. I'm sorry.
Oh,
The
okay.
amendment was you fund it from the improved assessment, but you can't improve the assessment until you've done the project. So how do you fund the project to get? How do you even know somebody did it? Because there's no program to help fund it. So you need seed money, I would think, or the whole thing collapses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, through the chair to the counselor, when we're talking about the TIG program, there is an initial investment that is made by the private sector into the redevelopment of that property. We look at it from the perspective of what we believe the assessment will be. However, funding isn't flowed to that developer until MPAC comes in and, assesses that assessment at a later date. So it really is a forecast of what we think that reduction in the tax will be. This would become a component of their overall redevelopment and construction costs. So they would need to front that money first. So it's really taking away from the concept of a 50-50 matching grant. Like we would be moving directly away from that.
The whole idea of the grant is to entice somebody to do something, but there's nothing to entice them with.
That's correct. And I think from the perspective of the fact that, there's been a lot of legislative changes in the last year when we're looking at things like Bill 109, Bill 23, there's a lot of emphasis on new construction, new development. This program is really targeted at existing development, making improvements to those existing areas that are maybe a little harder hit, a little harder to redevelop, but play a key and vital role in the city's overall growth management strategy. These are the areas that we want to target for intensification. These are the areas we want to target for reinvestment. These grants are intended to incite that type of development, and it gives us a little bit more control over the type of development that we see in these areas that we really aren't afforded through zoning. So that's really the intent of this is really to kind of focus on those harder hit areas that play a key role in our overall growth management structure.
Okay. And either I'm confused or others are confused, but one side or the other is confused here because there was an amendment to take half of the $100,000 and target the downtown. But then later it was said, well, we can't support it because it's not for the whole city. Well, half $50,000 is for the whole city wherever there's a gray field. Am I not seeing it correctly?
I do want to clarify that there are two incentive programs. There is a Grayfields incentive program, which does not include the downtown. If you recall, at the time that we brought forward these programs, we removed the downtown core because we brought forward a separate CIP for the downtown targeting residential construction, and we offered an additional incentive for affordable housing. I think if we want to look at opportunities to flow money through these programs to the CEPTED program to increase that sort of crime prevention through environmental design, then we really need to take a step back and look at the merits of the downtown CIP, which is not before you this evening.
But the amendment that's being amended indicates that we'll take 50% of this facade and dedicate it to the downtown, but the other 50% would go to the facade in the Grayfield, which takes in the wider city, correct?
Within the Grayfields, there are specific target areas that does not capture the entire city. There are focus areas, which is the intent of what the Grayfields CIP is.
But they're not
intended to do.
downtown properties. is my
Councillor
point.
Sluss.
That's correct.
You've reached your time.
Okay, I think I got it. Thank you.
All right. I've got Mayor Davis followed by Councillor Hunt on the amendment.
Yeah, in terms of the areas, you recall there are some Grayfield areas that are on Colburn Street East, some in Charing Cross. The CEPTED is intended to be the downtown SIP area, which we set out a community improvement area, which is about the same as the BAA boundaries. And I'd say this, that I understand what the mover of the amendment's trying to do, which is find a way of financing this that doesn't impact on the property taxpayer. But the problem is with that amendment, the CEPTED improvements are not intended to improve the value of a property. They're intended to protect the property from vandalism and also to address a social purpose, which is to reduce crime and eliminating those property circumstances that aid and abet social misbehavior and criminal activity in the downtown area. So with the one half of the money is going to CEPTED, that's not going to improve the value of the properties. It's not going to result in the properties paying more tax, which you then address through a tax incentive program. So I think it really is, I understand the intent of the amendment. It's honorable, but it's frankly not very workable.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to staff. So this program has already been, so the category says response to direction from council, and Heidi, I'm going to speak directly to you. You said we're not looking at the merits of the program. We're basically just looking at the funding. So based on the mayor's amendment that $50,000 of it is specifically for SEPTED in the downtown, then what we're really looking at is $50,000 for facade improvements in, could be the downtown and or other areas. Am I getting that correctly?
So through the chair, that's our understanding of the amendment where we were asking for $100,000 to cover over the program that was previously approved by council last year. And instead, what we would receive if this were to pass was $50,000 to the program that was approved by council last year. And then if another $50,000 reallocated to an existing community improvement plan that we have in the downtown. And we would have to look at that plan to see if it requires an amendment to include SEPTED audits. So if the existing CIP program we have for the downtown core does not include the program for SEPTED audits, we would bring forward those amendments to the existing program. So it's a basic tenet of grants. When you're giving grants to, for instance, commercial or industrial institutions or organizations, that you require a program like this so that it's not bonusing. That's why we have programs to provide incentives under the Municipal Act in ways that are legal. And so I believe your understanding is accurate.
So I guess my question is, if we take the $50,000 out of this program, how effective is this program going to be based on council's direction to establish this grant program? Because now it's only going to be half the funding available because the other 50,000 is being moved to something else.
Through the chair to the counselor, the program would absolutely still be effective. It would just mean that we would have the ability to approve less grants within a calendar year. But overall, the value of those grants and the contributions that they would make would still be very effective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Any further questions on the amendment? Councillor Carpenter?
Yes, again, I'm not going to support the amendment. The original one that we passed to the mayors was, as staff said, very clearly another program in its entirety, and we'll have to come back and make those amendments. But staff can always come back to us, if the facade grant is really popular and is successful, they can come back to us, and if the need be, if there's need for more funding, if not, they will report accordingly. So that's why I supported the mayor's amendment, even though it's sort of into another community improvement plan area. It does the right thing. So I can't support the amendment on the floor, and I would hope my council colleagues would not as well.
Seeing no further speakers, let's call the vote on the amendment.
The amendment is lost on a recorded vote of 1-9. Those in favor, Councillor Martin. Those opposed, Mayor Davis. Councillors Sullivan, Caputo, Sless, McCreary, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
Okay, we're back to the main motion, and is there any discussion on it? Seeing none, I call the vote.
The motion as amended carries on a recorded vote of 8-2. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sullivan, Caputo, Sless, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg. Those opposed, Councillors Martin and McCreary.
All right, I'd like to take this time to have a 20-minute recess. Call this meeting to order. We're going to start at step 6A. Step 6A provides a summary of the executive and legislative 2023 operating budget. We'll now go through each subset to step B. If members have any questions or motions to the budget, increases or decreases, they will be considered in order of the below listed departments. So we'll start out with 6B1, the mayor's office. Any questions or motions? Seeing none. Oh, look at that. Mayor Davis on the mayor's office.
Yeah, I wanted, especially for the new counselors, you'll see that $5,000 in there. And just so you know, this is something we added into the budget about 2-3 years ago. It's a council indemnification fund where if you feel that you've been defamed or whatever, and you need to seek legal advice or take action, those are funds that are available for that purpose. So, and for some reason got put into my budget, but it's there and available to all council members.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Councilor McCurry.
Chair, thank you. And through you, there seem to be a number of categories in the mayor's budget that are very, very large numbers, very large numbers. Professional services, for instance, we have a budget of $5,000, but we don't have any expense this year, and the prior year was under 1,000. And I wonder if there was consideration to a reduction in that number.
That's the one I just described. It's identification. So it was set at 5,000 based on the original council resolution, but you're right. Many years you don't use it, but that's for whatever reason.
Sorry. Okay. So that it's in the mayor's office budget, but it's actually it's all of council, correct?
Right. And I might just say that unlike the councilor's budget that, mine didn't increase 7%. It's just, I think 3% overall. Just want to make that observation.
I wonder, again, through you, Mr. Chair, the mayor's office has a budget of 2023, $15,000 and change, which are grants to charitable organizations. And I'm wondering what specifically that amount is for. We didn't appear to have used any of that budget in 22, at least to date, and in the prior year we only used 1,000.
Hang on, what page you at?
Page 1 of the document I'm on. Yeah. It rather does stand out as it's a 341% increase.
Oh, I know what that one is. Okay, that's an easy answer on that one. So I think it's important to note that the mayor's position in Brantford is one of the lowest paid for any big city in Ontario. And then also Brantford does serve on the hydro board. And unlike the other two elected officials, does not able to retain personally the amounts that are paid. That's what this reflects. This reflects the amount that's paid by the Hydro Corporation, Grand Bridge Energy, for my services on the board. And so it's a flow through in my budget. It comes in and then it goes out based on that council resolution to Nova Vita, the hospital, United Way. So it's an in and out, and it is does seem to be a large increase over 1 year, but that's because I started service in that board last year.
So,
and the GRC too.
So are the beneficiaries for 2022 actually going to receive money? Because they haven't been paid anything yet.
That's a good question. I actually asked accounting if they could provide me with a confirmation that the amounts have been paid out. And I think I have to Joelle, do I need to have a resolution confirming the monies this year should be treated the same way?
Through you, Mayor Davis, I'd really have to go back and look at that resolution. We obviously felt that it was appropriate because we supported the budget for this year being established in the same manner. So I don't believe that is necessary, and I will follow up about the redirection of the 2022 funds.
All right, and would you
Thank you,
mind?
Councillor McCurry. Your time's up. Would you like to go back in the queue?
Thank you, Councilor McCurry. The mayor used all my time.
He is the mayor. He knows how to drag out those
Yes,
questions.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
further
I will.
discussions on the mayor's office? Councillor Carpenter.
Well, we just approved the Brantford Bulldogs coming to town and the mayor's quite generously, and I've had the discussion about him providing jerseys to all members of council at least one time so that we can, when we show up at the Brantford Bulldogs, we are representing the city in the proper fashion. And so I just support the mayor's budget as is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Any Councillor Sullivan?
Mayor Davis, I'm an extra large.
All right. Any further questions on the mayor? Councillor McCurry.
Chair, thank you very much. The mayor's office has funding both for meals and for catering. I'm presuming one of those to feed members of council between special council and council meetings. Is that what the one number's for?
Okay, that one I don't know the answer to. Sasha is going to help the chief of staff to the CEO and the mayor.
Through your chair to Councillor McCreary, that is correct. There are two different budgets. So the catering budget covers for our event expenses, such as the inaugural celebration, as well as the all-staff Christmas celebration that takes place every year. Catering is for private meals and events that would take place out of the mayor's office.
Okay, so the budget for the catering this year is 17.5, and most we've spent was 47.70 in a prior year.
Correct. Through the chair to Councillor McCreary, the reason for the reduction over the last couple of years has been due to a decrease in events through COVID.
Okay, so you plan to utilize the budget this year.
Through the chair to Councillor McCreary, that's correct. I plan on resuming all events this year.
Mr. Chair, I've concluded my torment of the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McCurry. Any further questions regarding the mayor's office budget? Seeing none, let's move to 6B2, the members of council. Any questions on that line item? Councillor Carpenter.
Could staff explain why the increase?
Through the chair, Chris Gauthier, acting clerk and director of clerk services. The increase is due to a loss of revenue due to the honorariums for Brantford Hydro, Power, and Energy, as well as an increase in the meals budget. We put the meals budget on hold as per council direction during the COVID period. And so you'll see an increase of $10,000 for the meals. As well, the clerk's department transferred over the advertising and postage for certain statutory matters, such as planning notices to reflect the proper department.
Okay, so the only actual increase would have been the 2% for salaries and so forth. The rest has been transferred over or put back in the budget from previous years.
That's correct. And that loss of the revenue from those boards.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on 6B2? Seeing none, we're going to move to the next step. 7A provides a summary of the Community Services and Social Development 2023 operating budget. I now ask Aaron Wallace, Acting General Manager, to commence the presentation with respect to 2023 budget.
Well, good evening through the chair. I'm Aaron Wallace. I'm the acting general manager for community services. I'm joined by Mary Musselin, our director of housing and homelessness. Thank you for the opportunity to present our 2023 budget to you this evening for your consideration. So as this committee knows, our commission takes part in 2 budget cycles. In January, Estimates Committee considered our shared services budget. So that is the budget for the services that we are provincially appointed to deliver for the city and the county. So those are things like Ontario Works, housing and homelessness, support to childcare, and early on parent and child drop-in centers. So collectively, the commission comes in at a 0.19 increase in 2023. But I will say that number is benefited by funding provided by the County of Brant and the provincial and federal government, who collectively with the city fund those services for the city and the county. So this budget this evening deals with the programs and services we have that are not mandated to also be delivered to the County of Brant. Primarily the Community Programs Department, which is sport and recreation programs within your community centers, Gretzky Center, Earl Haig Family Fun Park, neighborhood associations, Bell Homestead, partnership initiatives, community events, just to name a few. But if you're watching the slide, you do see housing pop up there again, just a moment after I said we'd already dealt with that in January. So the housing line in the budget this evening deals with lines that are only administered by the city of Brantford and not shared with the County of Brant. One of them pops out at you, no doubt, is that 20% increase in the transfer to reserve. So that 26,000 of that is actually offset in the January shared services budget because we have a revenue from the John Noble Apartments, which we have council direction to then put into reserve for future affordable housing builds. So what happens is that revenue is realized there, it's pulled into this municipal budget and then transferred out as an expense into the reserve. So you do see that 20%, but in some ways that is a good news story. So in terms of the collective non-cost shared budget, we're coming in at an increase of 137,000 or about 4.7 increase over 2022. So as this committee knows, with the number of grants and programs that start and stop within our department, you'll see lots of fluctuations in terms of revenue and expenses and that kind of thing. But I will draw your attention just to a couple of the budget drivers when thinking of that 137, and both of them have some interesting backstories. So the one is the reintroduction of the money for the 2023 air show. So council will remember, or past council will remember, that we did receive notice in last year's estimates that the air show would not be happening. The charity air show would not be happening in 2022. So we took that 21,500 out of last year's budget, so we wouldn't bill the taxpayers for a show we knew wasn't happening, and then we had council direction to put it back in for 2023. So it shows up in the budget as a full 100% increase, but that again is a reintroduction of that cost from the cancellation of the air show last year. The other one, just to draw your attention to, is a similar story, is 89,000 for the reopening of the Woodman Pool. So as the Woodman Pool has been under construction, we have not put operating costs in the budget for that, but we do have an operating cost this year of 89,000. So just a couple of budget drivers to draw your attention to. I'll also just note, I know the treasurer did, so I'll touch briefly on this, that we are projecting our revenues at the Wayne Gretzky Aquatics and Fitness to be about 80% of pre-COVID levels. And so as our treasurer indicated, we will use COVID grants held within the casino reserve to offset that additional 20% as we continue to build our programs back, rather than bill that revenue loss back to the taxpayers. And I'll talk more about that in a second. In terms of our 2023 initiatives, a couple of things in housing, and of course we see housing in a couple of these different budget cycles, but as always, working to maintain our assets, not just on behalf of the families who live there, but of course as the keepers of assets of the corporation, making sure they're in a state of good repair for future generations. And also looking in housing as a key initiative to look at the governance of housing, and just again, does cross the conversation of both budgets. We do have a local housing corporation, we have a municipal nonprofit housing corporation, and this all sounds like housing word salad for someone who's not been involved in housing. But the upshot of all of that is we are looking to see how we can bring that governance together, both for efficiencies, but also how we can best support the community in terms of additional affordable housing and keeping our housing in a state of good repair. So the vast majority of the initiatives that I'll talk about this evening are for the community programs department. The first, I just touched on this with the revenue offset for Gretzky Center. Number one priority for us is getting back to pre-COVID attendance and program levels. And there's some really, really good indicators kind of in November, December, and then coming into the new year. So we are seeing a lot of new and kind of re-upped memberships at the Gretzky Center. We're seeing a lot of our drop-in and registration programs very full. So I'm very optimistic about how we get back to that level. Interestingly, at Bell Homestead, we had 40% more visitors than we had before COVID. So people are very eager to get back out. We see lots of great attendance at our community events and those types of things. So one of the challenges we have, and all municipalities are having this, is around staffing, particularly part-time staffing, and particularly in aquatics. So one of the things we'll do, of course, is we'll do the thing to continue to post those jobs and be creative about where we find those folks and work with our partners and try to find staff so we can expand programming. But we're also going to really double down in 2023 in terms of our aquatics training. We want to make sure that we have lots of sessions where we can recertify both our own staff and kind of see our aquatics program as a training hub to get those trained lifeguards. The more lifeguards we have, the more kind of drop-ins and swimming lessons and those kinds of things we can offer, and the more revenue we can generate towards that aspirational 100% target in 2024. The second key initiative related to budget in 2023 is that we don't have a full understanding of what these programs cost. So what we're doing, and members of the user fee task force would have seen some of this in prior council, trying to get a sense of all your costs in the staffing, the facility, the overhead, all of that on a per hour basis or per program basis. What does it cost to run a program versus what we charge? And we know that many programs in sport and recreation are subsidized by the municipality. But what we want to get is our arms around exactly how that looks. We can come back to council and say, here's the programs, here's the extent of their subsidized in real dollars, and give us some direction in terms of what programs you want to subsidize at what level. So that's creating a dashboard for council and having that business intelligence around what programs make, how much they're subsidized, and trying to get a better sense of that as we move forward. Next priority, of course, is partnerships. We know that's a huge priority of this council, and that is a priority of our departments as well. So we have one of the things that we realize is there's things we do directly and we do it very well. And there's things that our community partners do or our neighborhood associations do better than we can. And so with programs like Healthy Kids, neighborhood associations, the immigration partnership, this is about bringing experts and volunteers and community agencies together. And we put tens of thousands of hours of programming into the community just by coordinating those partners and having those conversations. And those partnerships are largely based on our strategies. So council knows that we have age-friendly strategy, we have a youth engagement strategy, we have a building our community from the kids up strategy. And so what those allow us to do is pull those partners together around that strategy, have metrics for the things we want to deliver for the community. And then when it comes time for grant, easy to put pen to paper because all the partners are around the table and we've already got the metrics and the strategy ready to go. And just lastly, I'll touch on this. 2023, we really want to celebrate our community. There's some really interesting events coming up and milestones coming up. So I'll start with the second one. Oh, I think I'm on the right side. I'll start with the second one listed there. And that is 2024 is the 150th anniversary of the telephone. So for folks that don't know that one of the most incredible technological achievements in the history of humanity happened down the road, we're going to find you and we're going to tell you. So we're really excited. So 2023 is really a conversation about how we're going to lay out that plan, what we're going to do in 2024, and we'll come back to council with some additional information on that. The second anniversary I'll highlight, and of course, within these anniversaries, we're going to see everyone at Canada Day. We're going to see everyone at Harmony Square. So we have lots of things to celebrate besides these two. But in 2023 is also the 10th anniversary of the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center. So I'll flip to my last slide here, and that is the unmet need for the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center. So I'll pause for just a quick housekeeping note. You also see on your agenda a report from staff about this, which is not always the case with unmet needs. So I'll just pause, I'll explain why there's a report, then I'll come back to the event itself. So what we'd like to do within this event is have a public art display or commemoration for Lord Mayor Walter Gretzky. And so what we're intending to do for that display is take $6,500 out of the public art reserve to help fund that. So the report speaks to this unmet need in more detail, but it also gives staff direction to get money out of that public art reserve to go ahead with that art project. And so our budget, and that report will kind of drift through estimates committee together, and then finally, for council's consideration, be approved at council. And so if council wants to move forward with a celebration like this, what we will have at the same time for our culture team is that direction to use that public art reserve money and then go out to Glenhurst and find that artist. We got to find the artist to do the art so we have it in the fall for the celebration. So that's your housekeeping note in terms of why there's a report that looks very similar to what I'm about to say on the screen. So in terms of the celebration itself, we want to have a day in the fall to commemorate that 10th anniversary. We want to, of course, invite dignitaries and civic leaders to recognize the importance of that center. And then leading up to it, we want to have 3 weeks of sports demonstrations, free drop-in programs, getting people re-engaged with the center. So I talked about, all of the things we need to do to get our attendance back up in terms of lifeguards and marketing the heck out of our programs. And we're going to do that. But this is such a unique opportunity. If you haven't been there since you stopped playing hockey, or you haven't been there since your kids quit swimming lessons, come on back. You want to try out for the Bulldogs, you got to hit the gym, right? So we'll see you there. Let's go. So what we want to do is have these calendar free events, getting people reacquainted with the center, having this big day, unveil the monument for Lord Mayor Walter Gretzky, in addition to some landscaping. So the whole project, that whole thing I described, cost about $52,000. So what we want to do, I talked about the $6,500 coming out of the public art reserve. We also are intending to raise about $20,000 through a puck and ball tournament and sponsorship. If we do better than that, we won't spend all the money you give us, but we do set that as a conservative estimate. It's how we can offset that. So what you would see is a puck and ball tournament in service of this, some sponsorship. You'll see some landscaping to dress up the outside of the center as well. We'll have the public art unveiling. We'll have a great day. And of course, we'll have a number of weeks of programming leading up to that to celebrate the 10th anniversary of such a wonderful center. So I'll leave it there and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. I think I've memorized everything you said. Okay, we'll now go through each subset to step 7B. Members have any questions or motions to the budget increases or decreases, they will be considered in the order listed below by departments. We will start with 7B1, the CSSD administration. Any questions or motions on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to 7B2, housing. Seeing nothing, we'll move to 7B3, community programs and social development. Councillor Carpenter.
Just a comment on this one. I know Megan does a terrific job working with the neighborhood associations, and neighborhood associations are integral to this community. And I'm so glad that you provide that basic level of support. And the neighbor associations are providing tremendous programming for the community, as you've already said. And I know every counselor has been part of that process. So thank you to Megan and to the other support.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Any further comments or motions on this item? Seeing none, there is an unmet need before us. Can we get a motion to put it on the floor? I saw Councillor McCreary's hand go up first. Seconder, Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Councillor McCreary.
Well, as we saw last night, City of Brantford should grasp every opportunity to embark upon good news, feeling good about our community, doing the things that help us celebrate what we are. And I can recall, it seems scant days ago, that Councillor Martin and I were there for the grand opening. And this will mirror what we did at the grand opening, except we're going to have a lot of really cool stuff for people to do in the lead up to this. I've had a bit of a discussion with Indy about this, and it looks like we've got a pretty good program going here. And I would hope that everybody would support it. And you know, it's another one of these free events that people in Brantford can enjoy. We know, Lord knows, there's a lot of people in town that don't have the means to spend a lot of money to go to events and to attend things like the Bulldogs, which is why it's so important for us to to be able to provide these events like this and the air show for our community. I won't say it's not a lot of money because a friend of mine got in trouble for saying that once.
Any further discussion? Counselor Martin.
Thank you. I'd just like to correct one thing, though. This isn't the 10th anniversary of the Gretzky Center. This is the 10th anniversary of rebuilding the Gretzky Center. It was the Gretzky Center before we set about rebuilding it. So I don't know if that needs to be corrected in the paperwork or the event, but it's wonderful that it's now 10 years since we did that, and it's standing up well, and it's seen a lot of use. I know the walking track gets well used, so it's glad we were able to keep that in the program. So looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great week leading up to a wonderful day, and I hope council can support this 100%.
Thank you, Counselor Martin. Mayor Davis.
Well, I would be, I am a bit concerned that there's so many activities that could take place in any other ward, and because of this are taking place only in Ward 3. But I also look at what is actually being celebrated in particular there. And one aspect of it that I find particularly exciting, and to bring some finality to everything that has happened and we've done to recognize Walter Gretzky, because included in here is kind of a final commemoration of his parking spot at the Wayne Gretzky Center. And that's kind of been the loose end in terms of all the things that we've done to recognize and honor Walter Gretzky since his passing. And this will, I think, more or less complete that program. And of course, obviously, that should be done at the Wayne Gretzky Center. And so, given the nature of the activities, I'm prepared in this case to overlook the fact that they're all taking place in Ward 3, and we'll be able to support this.
Counselor Sluss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm certainly supportive of this, Aaron. I think it's wonderful to do. And I would hope we would reach out to the family and get them heavily involved. And if there's any way I can help facilitate that, I'd be happy to if you run into a roadblock. And having said that, I'm pleased to support Councilor McCreary in his efforts to increase the budget. So I'm happy to do this, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Carpenter.
We're all getting a little bit of enjoyment out of this, as I can see. But Councilor McCreary, you kind of started with the mayor, and the mayor was rightful to give it back. It was all what's fair. It's a great program. I just want to suggest to staff that we're going to have the Bulldogs here, so we might be able to include the Bulldogs in this event at the Gretzky Center, and we may even see some Gretzky family, as Councilor Sluss, maybe even Wayne Gretzky himself. So I think that this is a good time for this to work out. It'll work out quite fine. Celebration of the telephone, another matter though. Unfortunately, we kind of paved over that spot. Would have been nice to had a hookup and actually made a telephone call from that location over there in this Harmony Square to the location in Paris where the actual original phone call took place. It'd be nice to see something like that actually take place, even if it is by cell phone. From one location to the other would be an interesting thing to finalize. Thank you for your work. Thank you for everything that both of you are doing. It's tremendous work in that department and really been making some fine changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Carpenter. And see no further speakers. Counselor McCreary, I believe you've got an amendment to this unmet need. All right, I just thought it might fit within it. Do you want this to go through with the?
I'm not sure if we have
unmet need or
we have a different wording than what's in the package.
We're sorting some.
We should. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. We do have an amendment. Yeah, sorry. And thank you, Councilor Sluss. I will be adding more to the budget. It reads that staff be directed to engage the Ward 3 councilors and area residents on the potential installation of traffic control at the intersection of Fairview and Walter Gretzky Boulevard and report back to the May 23 Committee of the Whole operations, including an option for an entry feature to showcase the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center at the intersection. And sorry, Mr. Chair, I completely forgotten about this since reminded no more than an hour ago. This is an examination of signalizing or otherwise controlling the T intersection where the northbound Gretzky access meets Fairview Drive. It's a safety issue for users of the facility coming and going. It's also a safety issue for members of the neighborhood. And we're going to be having an investigation of that, including a survey of those living in the immediate neighborhood. So I'd appreciate it if we could get support for this as well tonight, folks.
I'm sorry, did we get a seconder on that? Very good. Any further discussion? Councillor Carpenter.
I'll support it. It really doesn't belong here. I mean, this is about the celebration of the Wayne Gretzky Sports Center, and it's been sort of penciled in. So I'm okay with that, but it should have been it could have better been brought to council as a resolution. But either way, it's going to be the end result's going to be the same. So I'm happy to support it now, but it probably shouldn't have been on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. Any further discussions on the amendment to the unmet need? Seeing none, let's have the vote.
The amendment carries on unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
Looks like we've got about one more thing to do, and that's to pass this as amended. So any discussion on the item as amended? Seeing none, let's call a vote.
The unmet need carries as amended unanimously on a recorded vote. Those in favor, Mayor Davis, Councillor Sullivan, Caputo, Celeste, Martin, McCreary, Hunt, Carpenter, Samwell, and Van Tilburg.
All right. Joel Daniels, can you please provide the updated budget numbers before we recess?
Yes, I can, through you, Chair Van Tilburg. So tonight we did add $125,300 to the budget for an updated operating budget amount of $182,428,716. It's a budget impact after assessment growth of 2.69%, an average residential tax impact of 3.6%, and a dollar impact for average residential of $123.52, an average commercial tax impact of 1%, average industrial tax impact of 1.4%, and average multi-residential tax impact of 0.09%.
Thank you, Joel. We are now recessed until Wednesday, February 15th, 2023 at 4:30 p.m.